Hey everybody, welcome back to RPG Imaginings. Halloween 2021 just happened a couple of days ago. It is the 3rd, and Chaosium has been celebrating the 40th anniversary of Call of Cthulhu this year, and there have been all sorts of releases and fun activities for people to participate in during the month of October, and one of those many aspects of the celebration has been the release of a new book called Cults of Cthulhu. And this is a book that focuses entirely upon the lore and expansion of lore of cults that are dedicated to the great old one Cthulhu. And this is a book that I think is fair to say people in the community have been interested in for a long time. There's multiple sides to the mythos, and the monstrous and cosmic sides to the mythos aren't the only aspects. One of the big aspects is how human beings interface with the cosmic horror of the mythos. And so this has been a much anticipated book. This is a preview copy of the PDF that was sent to me by MOB of Chaosium. And so MOB, thanks for sending this to me. And so this is a sponsored video. And since I first unlocked posts on YouTube just a couple of weeks ago, I thought that it might be a fun thing to poll my audience as to what aspects of this, what specific chapter, I should say, of this book you wanted me to preview. Because, you know, it's just good practice that you don't show the entire book online. That wouldn't be fair to the company. And, you know, Chaosium wants you buying their books, and I love Call of Cthulhu, and so I want you buying Call of Cthulhu books too. But that doesn't mean that we can't have a fun little in-depth look-see at what's going on here. And so 27 people voted, and the top vote getter was Chapter 1 out of the selections that I presented, and so that's what I want to show you today. And so Cults of Cthulhu, beautiful artwork here on this front page. And the book is written by Chris Lackey, Mike Mason, and friends, and so we'll just scroll through some of these initial pages here. You know, the standard stuff. I really do like that A Time to Harvest and Cults of Cthulhu has switched to this green motif for the lettering on the books, because forest green is my favorite color, and I like to see that in anything that I'm interfacing with. So credits, credits, credits. There are lots of tomes and creatures in here that are part of other properties, so we see all the normal references here to make sure people get credit for this, and then a beautiful page of the Great Cthulhu reaching towards you. Sorry about the phone going off there. So here's our table of contents, and we are going to preview Chapter 1, History of the Cthulhu Cult. And so if you wanted to pause and look at the rest of the table of contents, Chaosium has also been adding this mature content warning recently, and I really appreciate that, because if we want people to access the hobby and feel welcome in the hobby, it's only fair that everybody gets the choice as to how they want to experience the hobby. And so this is just giving some warnings about things that could be aggressive to people, and things that could be influencing post-traumatic stress disorder or other trauma that people have had in their past. And this is an excellent addition to all books that we're seeing by Chaosium right now, because if we're serious about inviting all gamers to be welcome in the hobby, then we have to do the work that is necessary to help people feel welcome. And so Chapter 1, History of the Cthulhu Cult, let's click on it, and here it is. Now, what really stood out to me when I was skimming the PDF is how deep this goes and how rich the history is that is presented just in this chapter. And you saw the other chapters in the book. It also details 5 specific Cthulhu cults from different regions of the world. There's new tomes and monsters and other aspects. There's 3 scenarios in this book. This is a chunky book, and that's a compliment. 370 pages, okay, for this. And so what Chapter 1 does, History of the Cthulhu Cult, and this is a good point also to point out that this book is in its entirety focused on Great Cthulhu and cults of Great Cthulhu. And I think that it's particularly fitting. You know, everybody has an aspect of the mythos that they're interested in. Some folks are more Hastur folks. I'm more of a Nyarlathotep, you know, person. But the game is called Call of Cthulhu. Okay, you know, and honestly, Cthulhu cults have not been featured in extreme detail in many of the 7th edition products that have been released. He just hasn't made a big appearance yet. And so I think it particularly fitting for the 40th anniversary that we get a book that is entirely focused on the Cthulhu cult and goes into depth as to so many lore options for you to add to your games. And we're going to see many of those options here at the beginning. Another thing, I guess, that I would add is that there is also a chapter, I believe chapter 3, on building your own Cthulhu cults. Maybe it's chapter 4. And that chapter could be used to build any cult for any deity in the Cthulhu mythos at all. And so this book isn't just useful for people who are interested in Great Cthulhu. It could also be useful for anyone who's interested in fleshing out the human side of the mythos for their gaming group. And there are definitely things that I'm going to be drawing from this book for my own group. And so History of the Cthulhu Cult, where there's a little introduction and then we get into a preface. And I really like this preface because it says here at the beginning, the following sections are drawn from the research of Mildred Schwartz, dated October 5th, 1939, and express her personal findings and opinions on the matter of Cthulhu cults. Schwartz's text is presented in full with minor editorial corrections. I love aspects of role-playing books that really get into the actual role-playing of it and write from the perspective of the individual, the character within the world who is presenting this. And this has been done, many times before for lots of different role-playing games, but it just seems like a fully appropriate thing to do for a book about these cults because it adds an air of authenticity to it. I could see a keeper handing out portions of this chapter to their players and saying, changing the date, so that it's more current to wherever their game is, and having their players actually interact with really deep lore that someone is purporting to be describing to them. We have a section on beliefs of Cthulhu worshippers, including the infamous phrase, "In his house at Rillier, dead Cthulhu waits dreaming." Pronunciations on this varies, and I'm not even going to attempt it. Because, I also really like this artwork of a Cthulhu idol, but then you can see the shadow of that idol is outreaching. I just think that that's a really lovely touch to that piece of artwork. So, timeline of Cthulhu worship. So following is a timeline I have constructed from historical accounts of what I believe to be Cthulhu or Cthulhu cult-related worship. Some of the evidence is, I admit, tenuous, but I will allow the reader to judge for themselves if the information is helpful or not. And you know what? Let's just go ahead and start with Sumer in 2000 BC. Okay, we're going right to Ur. Okay, city of Ur, which was a city in ancient Sumer that maybe most famous for the game of Ur, which was a token, turn-taking token game that has been found in the city of Ur. And of course, it's also very famous for the bas-reliefs. And so I don't know if this particular picture of a bas-relief is an actual relief that you might see, in the British Museum, or whether it is an artist's conception of a fictional bas-relief, but I think that this art also adds a little bit of authenticity to the situation as well. So we're going to start with the cult of Sumer in 2000 BC. And each of these sections sort of details what are the motivations of the cult? What is it that they are trying to accomplish? And so since this section is short right here, Cthulhu in Rome 60 AD, I just want to read this section out loud so you can sort of get a basic idea of the flavor of what is quote-unquote historically known, what is not, what could be useful. So Cthulhu in Rome 60 AD. The Roman historian Tacitus writes an account of a possible Cthulhu cult. In the port of Ostia, a group of sailors was arrested for the murder of 24 people over the span of 3 weeks. The leader of the group, a merchant and sculptor known as Fabius, had collected like-minded sailors from around the empire to help him bless the world for Cthulhu. It seemed that Fabius planned to create 10-foot-tall sculptures of his god, described as having the head of squid and the wings of a bat, and place them around parts of the greater Roman Empire. Once each sculpture was erected, Fabius and his cult followers would sacrifice a person and cover the statue in the victim's blood. Fabius did not recall how many statues he had made, but according to Tacitus, 31 were discovered by the authorities and destroyed. While the account leaves out many details, it appears Fabius and his followers were executed. And then there is a note to chapter 4, which has some like objects, some idols, and Cthulhu statues of Fabius is featured there on page 183 for further details. And so there are lots of links, and typically in a guide like this for role-playing games, you know, you'll see lore information, but then it will be linked to specific scenarios that exist in the book. You know, I can think of Berlin, the Wicked City being the most recent, very clear example of that for Call of Cthulhu 7th edition product, and it is definitely present here because there are 3 scenarios at the back of this book. All 3 of them are a different time period. So there is a gaslight scenario in this book, which we haven't gotten hardly any, if any, gaslight scenarios for 7th edition. There's a 1920 scenario, and there is a quote-unquote modern, I want to say that it takes place in the 1970s scenario as well in this book. And, you know, each of them is linked with a particular thing, and I'm not going to say any more because, you know, we want to avoid spoilers on that. Moving along with this chapter, we have Iram, City of Cthulhu in the 4th century, the Royal Cthulhu Cult of Japan, 781 AD. Each of these individual sections could be the basis of a hook of some sort for a role-playing game. And I like these as scenario hooks because it's just enough detail where it's going to give a keeper ideas to run with and to craft their own scenario around, but not so much detail that it boxes a keeper in or makes a keeper feel like they are strangled by the narrative or something. We have the Witch Cult of 1290, A Cure to St. Vitus's Dance, 1381, some more artwork, a woodlock print of the Witch Cult. The Well to Hell, 1485. The Cult of Cthulhu, 1486. The Narvaez Expedition, 1528. The Subterranean World of Xianyan, 1545. Let's read that one. The Asturian explorer Panfilo de Zamacano y Núñez, of course I picked the one with things that are going to be challenges for me to pronounce, claimed to have discovered a race of subterranean people in 1545 near what is now, sorry about that, in what is now Bangor, what is now Binger, Oklahoma. This bizarre account tells of a vast underground city called Kenyan, where these quote-unquote Indians, as Núñez describes them, lived with strange creatures and advanced technology. Núñez claimed these people worshipped a pantheon of gods including Yig, Shub-Niggurath, Sathagwa, and Tulu. This is one of the few accounts I have found where worship of Cthulhu, Tulu, is placed on par with other entities. The Kenyans, and for those of you who may not be familiar with the mythos, Kenyan is also associated with the Dreamlands, were said to be immortal, and with their technology were able to breed strange creatures that they subjugated for their own dark deeds and pleasures. According to Núñez, the Kenyanian civilization was declining, seemingly abandoned learning and growth for absolute hedonism. Núñez's account was discovered on a scroll found in a metal cylinder made of an unknown material in 1928. No physical evidence corroborating the existence of the Kenyans has, to date, been found. And here we have detail of the Narvaez expedition from the 16th century manuscript and an idol of great Cthulhu. The Cult of Fiji, 1643. The Coven of Norfolk, 1645. Now, I got to be careful here. I know out on the East Coast, this is pronounced Norfolk, okay? Here in Nebraska, this is pronounced Norfolk, and one of the ways that you can tell someone who, you know, speaks Nebraska versus some other dialect of American English is because, one, people comment that we don't have an accent. whether that's true or not. I mean, I'm from Wisconsin, and you can tell when I slip into a Wisconsin accent, eh? But also the pronunciation of Norfolk is a dead giveaway for someone who has not spent any time at all in Nebraska. In Nebraska, it's Norfolk. So there's some, U.S. dialect coaching for you. Sketches of the Coven of Norfolk. Interesting. Okay. Undying Masters, 1691. The Viennese Undying Masters, 1778. Strange Ministry of Cape Town, 1854. So these cults spread all over the world. And that's nice to see, because one of the real benefits to me for Call of Cthulhu is learning about realistic world history within the context of the game, because this is truly a world-spanning role-playing game, always has been, all the way back to Shadows of Yog-Sothoth, the first world-spanning campaign for Call of Cthulhu, a Greenland cult in 1860. The cult of, let's see how I do, Vazafasamudram. Not too bad. 1872, The Elevated Order of Morpheus, 1890. So here we are, Gaslight. There's references to the streets of Notting Hill, a very famous London neighborhood, before the movie even. And then we have a beautiful presentation of what looks like northern people worshiping a sculpture of Cthulhu. And Yonkers, this is the Greenland cult. Okay. Yonkers Revival, 1892. The infamous, I should say, Louisiana swamp cult of 1907. And here's a police sketches of the Louisiana swamp cult. The Society of the Angelic Ones. We're getting to a couple more now that are featured in the book. So the Louisiana Swamp Cult is featured in the book. I also want to say that the Society of the Angelic Ones is also featured in the book, and lots of detailed information. The symbol of the Angelic Ones here. The Esoteric Order of Dagon, 1928, of course, featured in H.P. Lovecraft's story, The Shadow over Innsmouth. And the Esoteric Order of Dagon is also featured prominently in Chapter 2 of the book. Here we have some Innsmouth gold. And then some modern cults. And one of them is the Cult of Ginoza, 1945. And this is the one that really stood out to me when I was perusing Chapter 2. The Church of Perfect Science, 1952 to present. And, it screams that one cult that y'all know about that starts with an S, that I'm not going to say the name for fear of, retribution or anything. But here we have a strange magazine detailing the Cult of Ginoza. Opening the, I can't quite read it here. Let's zoom in a little bit. Opening the mind to time and space. Some fun artwork there. Far out! Arthur C. Clarke. That's hilarious. Cover of Roger Blake's first novel. Carnival of Cthulhu, 1968. Paradise Massacre, 1971. The Children of Rillier, 1980. The Carlo Ortega Murders, 1973. So, if you're setting a modern Call of Cthulhu campaign, this chapter also includes really useful information that you would be able to link up to a modern scenario. It's close enough to present time that you'd be able to link it up. The Glenview Middle School 5, they're here, these creepy people, creepy students. Kanaloa Rising, 1992. Tyre Cthulhu, 1989 to 1992. The Oregon Standoff, 2001, and Endnote. This is by David Eberhardt, May 15th, 2017. That's all I got. If you have similar stories, please contact me. I know I, like Ms. Schwartz, have just scratched the surface. The world is a lot more dangerous than we ever imagined. Be careful. Then our artwork on this page is evidence taken from the Oregon Standoff. We may not be saved, but our children will inherit a world without death or suffering. Church of the New Life. And so there's a little preview of Chapter 1 of Cults of Cthulhu. And so here's some artwork before the next chapter as well. if you're interested in that. And so thanks everybody for watching. Like and subscribe if you liked. I'm only 15 subscribers away from 1,000 subs, and that's a big milestone. And it's pretty rare for most channels to make it to 1,000 subs. So if you'd be willing to subscribe, I'd appreciate it. You don't have to if you feel like it. And maybe if you enjoy this kind of RPG content, or if you're just getting into Call of Cthulhu and you have friends who are too, maybe share RPG Imaginings with them. And I would really, appreciate it if they consider, watching some videos or maybe subscribing as well. Well, thanks everybody so much for watching, and I'll have more great Chaosium products coming your way and more great TTRPG stuff coming your way as well. Thanks everybody. Have a great day.